Welcome to our first panel session today titled Expanding Health Insurance Coverage in Africa, the Role of Digital Innovation. This is a critical topic that addresses one of the most pressing challenges in healthcare, ensuring access to affordable and equitable health coverage for all. And digital innovation offers us transformative opportunities to close gap and streamline these processes that make healthcare coverage more inclusive and accessible. And today we'll be listening to a panel of experts who are at the forefront of driving these changes. So as you listen, I encourage you to engage actively by sharing your thoughts and dropping your questions in the Q&A box. And remember, you can see the full profile and bio of our panelists on the conference site. So this session today would be moderated by Mr. John Iwajoku, the CEO of IGEA HMO. Dr. John brings over 27 years of experience across finance, insurance, and technology. He's the CEO of IGEA HMO, one of Nigeria's largest health maintenance organizations. He leads strategic growth, digital transformation, and business development initiatives to enhance healthcare accessibility and quality. He has successfully driven transformation projects in leadership roles, including as MD CEO of Clearline HMO, and Group Executive Director at Royal Exchange PLC. He has a strong background in banking. He pioneered digital banking divisions at First City Monument Bank, Zenith Bank, and Keystone Bank. He's also an independent director at Thrive Microfinance Bank. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Economics, an MBA in Business Admin, and a FinTech program certificate from Oxford. He has also attended leadership and management programs at Wharton. His expertise in health insurance, fintech, and business development falls innovative customer-focused solutions in Nigeria's healthcare market. So please join me in welcoming Mr. John Iwajoku to moderate this panel session today. He would also introduce the other panelists, guide the discussion, and take Q&A from the audience. So welcome, Mr. John. It's an honor to have you here today. This session will be for an hour. I'll let you know when you have 10 minutes left so the panelists can round up. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Faida. Thank you for the introduction and welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. In continuation of the conference that have been wonderful so far, we'll be taking this session that's going to be focusing on innovating digital health, navigate and looking at the impact of digital transformation in ensuring that that plays out well. Like she rightly said, we have panelists that have extensive industry experience, and I'll quickly introduce them before we jump into the questions that will be shaping the discussion. First, we have Dr. Abel Mexi. He's the Chief Program Officer at Mobile Health International Limited. Welcome, Dr. Mexi. Also, we have Dr. Rudy Arnold Nana. Is the Director of Medical Video and Production, and is a researcher also at Digital Health Lab of Yale University. You're welcome, Dr. Rudy. Also among the panelists is Dr. Murayo Fakia. She's the founder and CEO of Oret Healthcare Enterprise. You're welcome, Dr. Murayo Fakia. And also with us today is Dr. Tunde Salako, who is the managing partner at Africa InsurTech Lab.
Nice to be here.
Also with us today is Dr. Bibi Shakwane. She's the founder and executive director of Medical Affairs Consulting, South Africa. You're welcome, Dr. Bibi. So just to set the tone for our discussion, the implementation of digital innovation have resulted in rapid expansion of healthcare insurance coverage across Africa. Millions of individuals now have easier access to healthcare, and thanks to a number of digital innovation. The continent's particular healthcare issues, like the severe lack of medical experts and great geographical distances, are being addressed today by these advances. Nowadays, a lot of insurance companies are using digital technology to increase the affordability, accessibility, and mobility of healthcare insurance. As you will notice, the adoption of digital health insurance is becoming more popular worldwide as a means of addressing healthcare issues. However, when it comes to the creation and uptake of advances in digital health, African nations are setting the standard, which is a great thing for us. Africa's well-established mobile phone infrastructure and rising internet penetration have been key factors in the expansion of digital health advances throughout the continent. Approximately about 60% of African population, which translates to more than 500 million people, currently use mobile phone. This trend is anticipated to continue in the years to come with the introduction of 5G technology. So today our panelists will be discussing different areas that is going to leverage on digital transformation to enhance the provision and accessibility of healthcare. And as far as I did say, in the course of the discussion, if you have any question, please put it in the chat room, and during the Q&A session, we'll address them. So we'll jump right into it. First, with Dr. Ibemetse. In your view, how can digital innovation help bridge the gap in health insurance coverage in Africa, particularly for underserved and rural population? And what specific digital solutions have shown promise in improving access to insurance in remote areas?
Thank you so much, Dr. John. For the first question regarding to how can digital innovation help bridge the gap in health insurance coverage in Africa, particularly for undeserved and rural communities, especially for the remote communities. Rather than calling it digital innovation and health insurance, I'll just merge them and we'll call them digital health insurance. So digital health insurance currently is significantly bridging the gap in health insurance in Africa, particularly as already mentioned on the question for undeserved community and rural population, usually within the remote areas. So through leveraging current technologies, digital health insurance solutions are currently enhancing the addressment or the coverage of unique challenges faced by such communities. For a start, we can talk about increased accessibility. Digital health insurance platforms enable users to access health service and insurance products remotely. So they don't need to go to such physical areas or service providers. So for instance, we can discuss about mobile applications where they are currently facilitating enrollment in health insurance plans without the need for physical visits to insurance office. This is also noted in on a study about digital health systems in Africa, where mobile technologies are currently offering a unique opportunity for social and financial institutions, particularly for low-income individuals who may be disconnected from the traditional healthcare systems. The next one is regarding to cost reduction. When we talk about cost reduction, digital health insurance solutions can lower operational costs by reducing the need for physical infrastructure, and also they can end our currently streamlining admin process, which are usually tiresome. So this efficiency can lead to lower premium for consumers, usually for population within the underserved communities. Actually, the World Health Organization emphasizes that digital health extends the scope and accessibility of health service, ultimately contributing to the universal health coverage as well. The other one is regarding to digital platforms and health data. Through that, currently there are studies and also activities and initiatives related to real-time data utilization. Digital platforms are currently enabling real-time data collection and analysis. This is actually helping in informing with better decision making and policy formulation as well. For example, mobile health interventions have been shown to improve patient-centered approach by supporting the health knowledge and also increasing the capacity in social equity. The last one will be related to community-based insurance models, which are currently are in progress in different parts of the continent. For example, we have here the community-based health insurance in Ethiopia. We have community-based health insurance in Rwanda, in Kenya. Currently, they are integrated with digital payment systems. So these are currently facilitating community-based health insurance schemes that allow members to pool resources and also share risks as well. So these are some of the impact of digital innovation or digital health insurance. For the follow-up question regarding to specific digital solutions which have shown promise in improving access to insurance in remote areas, we have some examples. For example, MedStart in Nigeria. This digital health insurance management system or health insurance management system is designed to streamline the administration of insurance schemes, insurance policies across multiple states in Nigeria. And the impact has been huge. This has significantly increased the enrollment among the poor households, aided by favorable policies currently and public-private partnerships. This will also, in turn, enhance the access to healthcare services, contributing to the universal health coverage as well. The other one is M-TIBA in Kenya. M-TIBA is a health wallet platform that allows users to save and spend and also save funds specifically for healthcare services. This is launched by PharmAccess in collaboration with Safaricom in Kenya. So they have connected over 4 million Kenyans with healthcare providers. This helped in facilitating the access to services with minimal transaction costs. It has also supports the National Health Insurance Fund. This has been reported previously. The other one is community-based health insurance and CMS in Rwanda. This is a system which is a government-led initiative, and this is aimed at improving the management of health insurance memberships. And this has been impacting the community with enhanced beneficiary enrollment, validation process, claim process, and also integrating mobile payments to facilitate easier access to healthcare services. The last one is maybe the Medical Credit Fund in Kenya. This program utilizes digital financial services to support health financing and insurance coverage for underserved and rural communities. This platform has been reported to in combining various digital intervention for enrolling beneficiaries and managing payments within the health insurance platform. So these are some of the specific.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Metsi. I mean, these are quite profound initiative that was saying digital innovation help transform. I like the idea around mobile platform having to drive accessibility and also leveraging on data for online data and assessment, because that's really critical in being able to dispense care, especially as we move into the rural areas. And great examples about different platforms across country that is beginning to deploy such solution, that are beginning to speak to most people in the rural areas, because that's where the real challenge is. I'm glad to hear that a whole lot of solutions are popping up in different part of the continent that speaks to this. It's quite heartwarming, really, to note that it's beginning to have significant impact across countries. Thank you for that response. So quickly, Dr. Rudy, so from your view, how can how do you think digital platform can improve health literacy and awareness around the benefit of health insurance, particularly in communities with low insurance uptake? And it's a follow-on question also. Are there some effective strategies for using digital media to engage and educate this population? Hi, Dr. Rudy, do you hear me? I will come back to Dr. Reed. I guess he's having a network issue. Dr. Faki, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. So how can digital tools enhance personalized insurance plans to cater to the diverse healthcare needs across different African demographics? And are there potential data privacy consideration in offering personalized insurance options?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Wajuku, for this opportunity. That's an excellent question. So if we're striving to personalize our insurance plans to cater to a diverse patient population, I think the way I will approach this question is to first think about what the actual purpose is of us trying to achieve personalization. As we know, even if we expand healthcare coverage, we're expanding healthcare access. But just because we expand healthcare access does not mean that this will translate into improving healthcare outcomes. So I think it's important for us to collect the right data, to collect data that will also target what we call social determinants of health or social drivers of health. And the reason why it's important to have that type of data is because studies have shown that up to 70 to 80% of clinical health outcomes are influenced by these social drivers of health. And that could be things such as literacy levels, food security issues, if you live in a bad neighborhood, your education levels, income levels. So if we don't have this data, we can truly personalize the health insurance offerings that we are providing to our beneficiaries. Why is this also important? This is important because if we're trying to understand some of the barriers to adoption of health insurance in Africa, it's important for us to address the pain points that are causing those barriers. And that is another reason why this type of data is important, because not only will we be able to create insurance plans that can address those pain points, we will also be able to use that same data set to be able to address some of the reasons why we have certain members that are not interested in pursuing certain plans, or whatever their barriers are. It will also enable us to engage other stakeholders that can help to address these pain points. So another reason, another way that we can use digital health tools, of course, we know right now everyone is talking about AI, machine learning is everywhere. But what I always say is that we cannot slap AI on everything. We need to have the right data quality, the right data infrastructure. And that is also why we need to have that foundation in place, meaning that before we are even trying to use AI or machine learning to analyze large data sets, it's important for us to use the right data sets in the first place, making sure that the data is free from bias, free from any types of errors, that the data is measuring the right things that we want it to measure. So again, I know I'm always harping on social determinants of health, but I'm always harping on that because when we think about effectiveness of healthcare, we want to make sure that whatever interventions we are providing to our patients result in the right outcomes. And again, if we're only just creating health insurance plans that will address factors such as, seeing your doctor, getting the right medications, and we're not addressing all of these other upstream factors, it's going to be really hard for us to get the eventual outcome that we want. So, and my last point about the right tools to use for personalization, of course, with electronic healthcare records, we can also integrate that type of data into the EHR systems. We can, of course, get information from wearable devices, from mobile platforms. Again, once we get that information, we need to make sure that we're targeting the data towards the eventual outcome that we're trying to pursue. So that would be the first aspect of the question. And then for the follow-up question regarding potential data privacy considerations, of course, whenever we are trying to personalize our insurance offerings, that means we will need to collect a lot of data to make sure that we're targeting the products to meet the right consumer base. Even though we are trying to gather all of these diverse data sets, we still need to find a way to practice data minimization principles, meaning that we should just collect as much data that we need to get the outcome that we're seeking. So if we don't need to have all of the household information, your social security or your NIN number, we should not collect that data. That is the first piece. The second piece, I believe that every organization should treat data privacy the same way that they treat any type of healthcare risk management procedures. What does that mean? That means that it's important for us to have some type of ethical review boards or committees that can conduct even internal audits regularly to ensure that the organizations are adhering to data privacy principles. The third piece of that, I will also mention that it's important for us to be proactive, because I think on so many occasions we tend to be reactive when it comes to medical errors, data privacy breaches. And how can we be proactive? It means that even before data privacy issues occur, we need to think ahead. So there are certain analyses that we tend to conduct in healthcare risk management. One of my favorite ones that I like to use is FMEA, which stands for Failure Mode Effective Analysis. And what that means is that whenever you have a process, you look at every step in that process and you're trying to look for the highest risk steps in that process. Based on the highest risk steps, you can now create corrective action plans peradventure if there's a breach in that particular step. So I will use the same approach also when it comes to data privacy issues. I will say that in terms of data collection, data storage, data transfer, we can break up each of these steps and look for the areas where we can have the greatest data privacy issues. And then proactively, we can come up with corrective action plans if those things happen. And finally, at the end of the day, patients should be at the center of everything that we're doing. So it's important for us to be very transparent with them regarding what we are using their data for. It's important for us to empower them regarding their data privacy rights, so that they understand that they have full ownership of their data, and we're just trying to utilize this data to improve healthcare outcomes for the patients. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, the aspect you raised about data, the quality of data is very key, because now we're infusing AI into a whole lot of initiative. You know, the outcome of AI is only as good as the quality of data that you put in there. And you see,
Exactly.
that's why data collection and even translation of those data matters a whole lot for us to be able to leverage data innovations around it. Then the aspect you also talked about data privacy, because we're talking about health here, and people are really private about their health, and they need to have that comfort level that their data are better managed, and that proactiveness also there for internal audits to always happen to ensure that data privacy principles are always observed from time to time. That gives the populace that comfort, and enrollees are better able to relate more and release necessary information for their well-being. Thank you for that response.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Tunde, I mean, you play a whole lot of role in digital innovation. So what role do you think telemedicine, which is one of the key things that's playing out right now, so what role do you think telemedicine services play in digital health insurance models, and how can these services make healthcare more accessible for insured patients? And also, as a follow-on, do you think insurers incorporate telemedicine into their coverage option to add value for policyholders?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. John. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, please.
All right, fantastic. Okay. Great deliberations by co-panelists thus far. That's really interesting topic that we're delving in today. Okay, so for starters, right, before we when we look at the concept of telemedicine, right, I think one of the things that has happened is when we look at during the COVID era, we were able to realize that a lot of myths were dispelled, particularly from the patients, right, who is the end user in this case. Now, what do I mean? Culturally, across Africa, right, and this is not to say it's a Nigerian thing, but let's speak from the cultures we know. You would rather prefer to see your caregiver eyeball to eyeball, not face to face. Like you're looking a person right in the eye, so you can just detect whether there are any anomalies and stuff like that. But COVID came without any notice, and then we now realize that physical contact was going to be a challenge, right? And so a lot of other things now started popping up all of a sudden, like, okay, different platforms were birthed, some of the platforms which were already existent, accentuated and decided, look, you know what, we're just going to, it's like this is going to be the new norm. And fast forward at the hand of COVID, we have what we call the new normal, right? And so there's this concept of hybrid where people will still prefer to go into the facilities and see their caregivers face to face. But I think what's more important really now is to look at it from the African context, right, and the African end user. There's a massive brain drain when it comes to healthcare professionals, and that's not going to probably stop anytime soon. And that is as a result of a lot of macro and micro economic factors, right? But let's not delve into that. But when we look at the pain point of it, number one, in terms of accessibility, and when we look at the patients to the caregiver ratio, which WHO gives its own statistics, in a place like Nigeria, you have it to almost about 1 in 12,000, right? How statistically will a caregiver be able to serve a huge populace like we have in most sub-Saharan African countries, and even the whole of Africa at large? That's, dare I say. Now, you have that disparity because of the brain drain and because of human capital, right? And then the second thing is, let's even pack the disparity in terms of the numbers aside. You have what we call a drought of specialist care, right? Wherein there are certain specialties that you wouldn't just find readily available, in certain parts of the country or certain parts of the continent. And it's not a construct that was designed deliberately, but that's just what it is. Now, so when we look at specialties like neurology, for instance, right? Look at specialties like oncology. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, health is not a selector of where you live, who you are, or where you come from, or your background, right? Anyone, unfortunately can come down with anything. And so when you start to look at the drought of specialties that are very critical, the question is, how do you close the gap? Given one, there's a brain drain, and there's just not the human capital readily available. And then two, these specialists are needed. So whether let me use Nigeria as a context, you live in the south or in the southeast or in the northwest, if you're required to see a certain type of specialist, like an oncologist, where statistically you have just about a handful of, I say a handful, maybe about 80 in the country, because that's a field I'm very, very interested in. And when you look at the neurosurgeons, for instance, there are less than 100 as well. The question now begets, how do you get the end users to get access to these services, particularly in the suburban and the rural areas, something that you were talking about with Dr. Abel earlier on. So I think one of the things that has happened and what has to happen specifically with health insurance models is the intentionality to create what I would describe as a plug and place. And what do I mean? Give an example of a partner company that we worked with in the past, a company called Gero Care, that provides elderly care services specifically to the geriatric population. They came up with a concept where they invented something called, I can't remember the full name, but it was called a G-Box or something like that, wherein they had a starter kit that was taken into the rural and the suburban areas, where you couldn't get access to even basic primary care, right? And then they would set it up with the gatekeepers of those communities so that they could have teleconsultations, from the cities, to those rural segments. Now those are the little things that key health insurance players should actually be advancing, particularly because when you look at the suburbs and the rural areas, the concept of insurance is even very strange to start with. Now, another thing that an oncology technology company called OncoPalyTech also has done is they created what we call hubs in the southwestern area of Nigeria and in other places in the northwestern area, where those hubs were essentially going to be the touch points for them to go and for patients to go and be able to communicate with oncologists around the country, right? So there are other examples like that, but I think one of the things that insurance companies may have to do, which also would also key into when you look at the mom and pop shop, or should I say the hub and spoke model, is to start creating little entry points, right? Like, because of data privacy, which my co-panelist was talking about earlier, to create those entry point kiosks where people just walk in, particularly in the suburbs, I beg your pardon, the rural areas. They go there and they use a simple platform to communicate so that data is not breached. A fantastic model is something called the Unjani model, which is South African. And it's actually nurse-led, right? So they have this health pods, which are customized and built to navigate rough terrains and rural areas. People walk into them, and then for next to nothing, they get consultation with the nurse as the first primary caregiver in the community, and then they get patched in to speak with doctors around different climes, and then specialists when need be. So it will only be when there's need for physical intervention that eventually these patients get access. So there's a couple of models like that, but I think for the main players and even burden insurance companies need to start creating those models, because even if you look at it's the concept of service, right? When you look at the phone devices, let's take it outside healthcare now, right? You have a situation whereby there are service centers all around the country because people need to fix their phones, right? People need to buy new devices, need to do different things. And so when we start to take that intentionality to the forefront, particularly in areas where accessibility is a problem, which is one of the key components when you're talking about the indices of healthcare, we're building things to fit the environment, right? We can talk about infrastructural gaps, but at least let's start pushing that conversation forward, building unique models. It doesn't have to be anything with heavy technology stacks, but something that just bridges the gap, because we're going to continue to have a wider gap in human capital. We're probably going to continue to have a wider gap in specialty care, and people are going to be people. People are going to need these two things. I'll pause there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Tunde. I mean, that's quite true. I mean, looking at the population and of people that even have mobile phones in Africa, for instance, now that in excess of 500 million, that itself creates an opportunity. And leveraging telemedicine on it is something insurance companies should consider. And a whole lot of insurance companies are actually considering it by layering telemedicine services to provide care to people that are widely dispersed. When you look at Africa and the geographical spread, like you rightly said, technology is one area you can leverage on, and telemedicine is something that has really come to play, especially with respect to specialist consultation. Because within the urban areas, having access to specialists is a challenge. Talk less of when you move into the rural areas. But with telemedicine services, it brings that accessibility closer to even the rural areas that are underserved. And it's something that a whole lot of insurance companies need to continue to leverage on and include in their offering. Thank you for that response. So, Dr. Bibi, from your own view, what do you think are the regulatory challenges in expanding digital health insurance in Africa? How can regulators create frameworks that encourage innovation while ensuring consumer protection? And also, as a follow-on, how can regulators keep pace with the rapid evolution of digital health insurance technologies?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for that question. So I think one of the key challenges that that is primary to expanding health insurance in Africa is that the regulatory landscape is quite fragmented. So we have fragmented regulations, and we also have fragmented pathways. So every region would do what works best for them in that particular region. And because of that, then having a harmonized approach becomes more difficult. Secondly, I would say that the frequent change in regulation also impacts on harmonization of regulations in Africa. I think we have reached a stage where there's almost regulatory fatigue because things keep changing. Notwithstanding that regulators change things frequently in order to achieve operational efficiencies, but it does eventually create fatigue in the workforce. I would also want to point to the fact that regulatory bodies exist within healthcare systems. And so for the fact that we have different healthcare systems in our continent with different healthcare priorities makes it also more challenging to have a more harmonized approach. Then I also want to talk about operational inefficiencies. Typically, one finds that operationally, some of the regions are still paper-based. Apologies. Some of the regulatory bodies are still paper-based, although there is now a positive trend towards using e-submissions like we've heard from the previous speaker in the morning. But paper-based manual submissions are inefficient, and they also make harmonization challenging. Then I also want to talk about the fact that there are different rules in the different jurisdictions. South Africa, for instance, has got its own rules within the jurisdiction, within the SADC community, and then other regions also have their own rules within their own jurisdictions based on what is efficient and workable for them. In addition, then, I want to point out to lack of compliance monitoring. So in a state where we would achieve harmonization, there must still be continuous monitoring. There must be robust monitoring to make sure that non-compliance is dealt with and compliance is promoted. But as we all know, compliance monitoring is a very difficult. It's not easy to monitor compliance. And I also then want to make a final comment on this question, and it has to do with the standard of the applications that are typically received by certain regulatory bodies that can also hamper harmonization. So what you put into a system is as good as what comes out. So if the applications are substandard with no supporting data, with no supporting clinical trial, then it creates a situation where regulatory bodies are faced with a backlog. But in essence, it's not a true backlog because it's a backlog of non-compliant submissions. So that is something that we need to be particularly aware of, especially as we move into the e-submissions, because even within an e-submission, one can still receive a lot of substandard applications, and all that they do is to block the pipeline without the the regulatory body having the ability to process them because documentation is lacking. And then on the second part of the question, how can the regulators keep pace with the rapid evolution of digital health insurance technologies? So the rapid pace at which we see technology advancing, we must not forget that at the core of it is a user, and everything that we push to the user must eventually be user-centric so that we can have a sustainable impact. Unless the user finds value in what is being given to them, unless it's user-centric, then there will be very limited impact in the medium to long term. So if the focus is on the user, then we must remember that every user exists within a community, within a cultural setting, within a local and within a regional healthcare environment. And to make sure that the pace is user-centric and the pace is valuable to the user, there has to be alignment. There must be alignment between the healthcare priorities of the health system. There has to be alignment with the burden of disease as well, because technology is there to assist us to deal with our most pressing issues. That is the core role of technology, and the insurance follows suit. That our most pressing issues must first be addressed, and then the others can follow suit.
Yep.
So on this one, then I find that there has to be a marriage between what is important for the user, what is important in the local environment, what is important in the regional environment, and what makes sense for the continent.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause there.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bibi. I mean, that alignment needs to happen even between the regulator, the insurance companies, and that will now dovetail into providing the required level of service to the enrollees. You know, like you said, whatever we're deploying out there have to be customer centric. It has to be intuitive, and it has to be something that speaks to their need. If not, adoption will be low. And the rate at which technology and innovation is rapidly expanding, it requires regulators also to be on their toes, so that they are able to come up with policies that align with the speed at which things are transforming, and also the expectation of the enrollees across different segments of the population. So that alignment is critical, and also because most of these policies have to be long-term in nature, you need to ensure that it's not fragmented, and there can be frequent changes, because it begins to distort ability of providers to come up with an enduring solution that will serve and that will stand the test of time. Those are critical areas that we must look at as an industry. Thank you for that response. So we'll come back to Dr. Abel. So what role do you think mobile technology and digital payment platform play in making health insurance more affordable and accessible across Africa? Also, as a follow-on, how can digital payment options reduce barriers to entry for low-income population?
Okay, thank you again for the opportunity. For the above question, for the first one, regarding to the role of mobile technology and digital payment, I would like to divide them. So first of all, let's discuss about the role of mobile technology. So I have mentioned this one earlier. So regarding to the increased access to healthcare service and the role of mobile technology enabling healthcare providers to reach patients in remote areas and underserved communities. These are usually through telemedicine, mobile health, be it a USSD or mobile applications. For instance, mobile health solutions allow patients to consult with healthcare professionals via their mobile phone, their application, and this in turn reduces the need for long distance travel to health facilities, as already Dr. Tunde mentioned earlier. The next one is regarding to the health education and awareness. Using such platforms, we can disseminate vital health information and educational resources directly to the end users, and also to the community. This will also help us in improving the health literacy among populations that may lack access to traditional educational system. As you know, even though we deploy different digital health solutions, usually when it comes to implementation and sustainability, usually we have a gap in digital literacy, usually in digital health solutions. For example, mobile applications can provide information on disease prevention, maternal health, chronic disease management, NCDs. This will in turn empower individuals and members of the community to make informed health decisions, which will also help us in implementing better and robust digital health insurance solutions. The next one is related to data collection and health monitoring. Mobile technologies and so these associated solutions facilitate the collection of health data, which can in turn be used to monitor patients for outcome, and also this will help us in improving the health delivery. I have mentioned about the platform Mtiba in Kenya. This actually, it was reported that it allows for real-time tracking of patient data, enabling healthcare providers to analyze trends and optimize care delivery as well. The next one is, I will discuss about the role of digital payment platforms. The first one is when we can talk about the financial inclusions. Digital payment platforms such as M-Pesa, the usual one, and we have Telebirr by Ethio Telecom, while M-Pesa by Safaricom. These have actually transformed how individuals manage healthcare expenses by enabling cashless transactions for insurance premiums and medical services as well. This is usually a good example in Kenya. This is particularly important for low-income population who may not have access to traditional banking services, which is the reality in most of our countries within our continent. The next one is allowing affordable insurance products. Digital payment solutions can support and currently supporting the development of innovative insurance products tailored to low-income individuals. We have CarePace, Mtiba platform, connecting patients with healthcare providers and insurers as well, facilitating affordable access to insurance coverage through mobile wallets. For example, we can also take one of our implementation in Nigeria at Mobihealth. Our telemedicine platform has been partnering with different HMOs and also different organizations in providing a digital payment. So after consultation, they can pay. Individuals can pay different services for laboratory, radiology, or other consultations. And also our subscription-based service is also linked to different mobile payments. And usually when it comes to health insurance, it's through partnership with different HMOs in Nigeria. The other one is streamlining claims processing. This is one of the most tiresome and linked with fraudulent activities in most of the countries. Digital payments can simplify such claim processing for both patients and also healthcare providers. The last one, community-based insurance models. Digital platforms enable the establishment of CDHI platforms that pool resources among members of the community. And these models actually leverage technology for enrollment, premium collection, and as I have mentioned earlier, making it easier for communities in remote areas to access affordable insurance coverage remotely. This one is for the first question. For the follow-up regarding to how can digital payments options reduce barriers to entry for low-income population. The first one I have already mentioned. I will repeat it: increased accessibility. Because when we talk about mobile platforms, digital health insurance platform, it's all about increasing the accessibility to individuals anywhere, everywhere. The next one is lowering transaction costs. This can be digital payments can reduce transaction costs by up to 90%, reported in some literatures, compared to traditional banking methods.
Yep.
This significant reduction makes it more affordable for low-income individuals to engage in financial transactions, such as paying insurance premiums, could be related to accessing also healthcare services. The third one is convenient payment solutions. These are really creating a huge impact when it comes to cash in and cash out networks. These networks allow users to convert physical cash into digital money without any issue. This flexibility is currently helping a lot of individuals, primarily who rely on cash transition into the digital economy while still meeting their immediate financial needs. The other one is enhancing the financial management. Digital payment platforms often come with features to help users manage their finance better. This has been reported. Automatic saving plans allows users in most platforms to save a portion of their income directly into a digital account. This promotes better financial habits and increasing saving rates by an average of about 37% within the first 6 months of adoption, which is also one of the reports published last year. The other one is in regards to empowering through financial services. Digital payment systems, they provide low-income individuals with access to various financial products, including saving accounts, microloans, insurance options. This empowers our community, members of our community, to make informed choices about their finances and healthcare needs. The other one is so through such transaction, the good thing is having a digital payment is improving transparency and security. Digital payments actually enhance transparency in financial transactions. They reduce the risk of corruption and also fraud as well. The last one, which I found it interesting, is related to support for women in marginalized groups. Women, particularly in rural areas, face significant barriers to accessing financial services in most parts of the continent. So digital payments have shown increase in education spending by up to 20% when women have access to digital saving accounts. So this is by providing women with financial tools. This system actually contribute not only to household economic stability, but also promotes broader societal well-being as well. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's quite interesting, really. Just like you said, mobile technology remains at the forefront of driving health accessibility across the continent, really. Just like I said during the introduction, having over 600 million people with phones across the country across the continent provides that opportunity to continue to drive health accessibility. And we do know that not all these phones are smartphones. So the beauty of mobile technology, like you rightly said, is for smartphones, we're able to layer mobile apps on it and other portal. For future phones, we're able to layer USSD on it to ensure that even people in rural areas are able to have a quick access to healthcare. And the payment option is also great, because either of this phone with the technologies that are layered on them creates an enabling platform and payment platform for you to make payments to access care with ease, as against having to go to physical infrastructure to do that. And clearly, we've seen the impact of mobile technology in driving accessibility across the continent, and we expect this to continue to expand even as 5G technology comes into play. Things like telemedicine that Dr. Tunde talked about also. We are seeing insurance companies begin to layer telemedicine on their mobile app so that that service is rendered free, and that makes it easily accessible by all at no cost. So there's a whole lot that mobile technology is doing for us and is going to do for us in the continent. Thank you, though. Dr. Anand, I couldn't speak with you the last time. Just follow up to our discussion. What do you think are the challenges of integrating digital health insurance systems with existing healthcare infrastructure, and how can they be addressed? Also, as a follow-up, are there particular models of integration that have worked well in other regions? Dr. Rudy seems to be having network challenges. I think we'll move on because of time. Dr. Fakia, how can digital innovation be used to simplify enrollment process in health insurance programs, making it easier and faster for people to sign up? And what are the main barriers to enrollment that digital tools can help overcome?
Okay, excellent question. So to expand on what you and Dr. Abel just discussed prior to this question, of course, we know that in Africa, we have a high rate of mobile penetration. So any type of enrollment process that we're trying to implement should be optimized for mobile technology. We need to leverage that. In addition to that, of course, even if you have mobile phones, smartphones, everyone on the continent that has a phone would not have a smartphone. So there needs to be offline functionality, especially in the rural areas, to make sure that they're not missing as we're trying to enroll them in the process. The other ways that we can also use digital innovations would be in terms of reaching the informal sector. Because I feel like a lot of times when we have this discussion about expanding health insurance coverage, where a lot of times we're centering our conversation around employer-based insurance. What about people that are not formally employed? People maybe like a market woman, people that have their own businesses. How do we reach them? And we also have, so a lot of the informal sector, they might even have trust issues with the healthcare system. So it's important to still have that human element as a part of the enrollment process. And that is how community healthcare workers can come in. So we can have community healthcare workers that have digital tools that can help with enrollment. So they can go into the marketplaces, religious sectors, they can educate potential enrollees, and then we can equip them with the right digital tools. That could be PDA, tablets, ways for them to gather the necessary information for enrollment. And in addition to that, once we have that information for enrollment, how do we also transfer that information as well? And I think that is where health information exchange platforms can also come into to help us as we're trying to enroll. Moreover, it's important to also streamline the process, because for a lot of people, you might be very literate with everything else, but when it comes to enrolling in insurance, it can be very complex and it can also be very intimidating for a lot of people. So it's important for us to simplify how we reach potential enrollees with the type of messaging, the types of advertisement that we're using to sensitize them to why having health insurance is important. So of course, having the right platform, social media, maybe having different messaging through their mobile phones, through WhatsApp. A lot of people, they communicate through WhatsApp. So just really trying to simplify how we get individuals to enroll is going to be important. And then just for the sake of time, for the follow-up question, what are some of the barriers to enrollment? So I mentioned that in my first response. I think a big barrier will be health literacy. I always say this, just because you have a doctorate degree, medical degree, PhD does not mean that you also have health literacy. It's not the same thing. So I think that is a major barrier that we need to overcome, making sure that people understand why they should prioritize having healthcare access, why they should not wait until something bad happens before they decide to seek care. So I would say that is one of the barriers. Another barrier would be financial constraints. And that is why I mentioned with my earlier response about getting social determinants of health data. We can identify if someone has any type of financial constraint, because if I'm struggling with putting food on the table, I'm not really going to prioritize obtaining health insurance. I'm just being realistic. So if people have, financial constraints that they have to overcome, that is the particular barrier that we need to address. And that is also why the government needs to be involved in this process. And we need to have adequate partnerships in place to provide the necessary social safety net support for potential enrollees so that they will be able to overcome some of these financial barriers. Of course, geographical barriers could be another one, because we might not have places where people can enroll. So that is where telemedicine can come in, where we can also integrate the enrollment process into a telemedicine platform. So that is one way to overcome that barrier. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, community healthcare workers can also help with that as well. And I think I would just stop here so I can give the rest of the panelists an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, great perspective around the community health workers. We're talking about mobile technology in the hands of people, in the populace. But again, health literacy is a key area that we cannot brush aside. So the aspect of having community health workers armed with digital tools, that they can use to drive onboarding and they can use to drive provision of care when they move into some of these areas, especially the kind of technologies that have offline capability, because in some rural areas, access to network becomes a challenge. So having an offline capability where you can actually do enrollment, like you said, and when you move into areas with better coverage, you're able to upload those data. They really do matter a lot. And the financial constraint aspect is also key, because as a research that have shown that there is a direct relationship between money in the pocket and adoption of healthcare insurance. When people are challenged in terms of how much they have in their pocket, healthcare insurance is the last thing they want to consider. And that's why we need government to intervene by coming up with social safety nets. Thank you for putting such light on that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, back to Dr. Tunde. So how do you think that digital health insurance platform can address the needs of the informal sector workers who make up a significant portion of the African workforce? And also, as a follow-up, are there flexible insurance models that cater specifically to financial realities of informal workers?
All right. Thank you, Mr. John. I think this is I want to describe this as a subtopic. Actually, it's a theme on its own, right? Yeah. Because this is the meat of the matter, right? We know that the informal sector largely is where you have a lot of loose cash flowing around, but unfortunately, it's still the one that is most deprived when it comes to access, when it comes to health insurance. During the course of the year, there was a report that was published by Money Point talking about the informal sector, one of the continents that newest unicorn, and it was very fascinating. The kind of light that was shed on it. I digress. I think the first thing that we need to start looking at, which we realize, which is one of the things that our mainstream portfolio company, Hadiel Health, is doing, is deconstructing health insurance. Right now, what do I mean by that? So you started bringing out the concept of what we call sachet insurance, right? It's just what the FMCGs have perfected over the years, right? Where they're able to take the same product and give it in small piecemeal quantities to the end user, right? In this case, the informal sector. So the informal sector we can categorize into different segments. We have include the gig workers as well. And apart from like Dr. Mario was talking about the market women and those different kinds of target population all fall into the category. And when we zone it down to a place like Nigeria, for instance, where you have over between 93% of people predominantly paying for healthcare out of pocket, right? It shows without saying that the importance of drilling down models that are not what used to be, need to come into place, because that's the only thing that's going to close the protection gap. A lot of the legacy insurance regulation that was put in place, will have to also be modernized. So we need more modernized legacy systems, because I'll give an example. When you look at a context of a place like next to us in Nigeria, Ghana, and you look at Nigeria, the advent of mobile money agents, for instance, supersedes what we have in Nigeria, despite the fact that the population of Nigeria is almost double that of Ghana. And what am I saying? Ghana is completely different because they have what you call a telco-led initiative financial systems, whereas a place like Nigeria has predominantly been a bank-led initiative system, which means that, for instance, to your point on mobile penetration, you still can't purchase health insurance, seamlessly through the use of a telecommunications network. Whereas when you move just next door to Ghana, it's completely different. So we need to start from the outside. Now, when we come into the inside, we need to look at what I'll describe as the 3 Ps, which is predominantly the major issue. 3 Ps being the pricing, the product, and the persona, right? When we want to talk about the product, oftentimes we talk about product market fits, we talk about minimum viability of products, but the issue is, for a very long time, insurance as a whole, and when you come to health insurance as a segment, the product has not been built around the consumer's persona, right? It's usually just structured from the perspective of, okay, this is how it should work. And to your point earlier, and also I think Dr. Mariah and Dr. Abel mentioned it, when you're looking at the construct of someone who wants to purchase health insurance and you haven't structured the products specifically around how the person can get it easily in terms of accessibility, how the person can afford it, then it's a dead on arrival product, right? So we need to first of all deconstruct and start to normalize the concepts of social insurance. When we now move to the pricing in terms of the affordability, we need to continue to innovate around the payment mechanisms and payment systems. 5 years ago, you wouldn't even see anything like monthly payment insurance premiums, right? Today, yes, we know there are a couple of players that do this. For instance, Hardio Health is doing this in conjunction with the mainstream health insurance in Nigeria to reach the gig workers and the informal sector. But there are now technology stacks that are available that it can even go deeper and enable as much as weekly payment collections and also daily payment collections, because that's what the fintech companies have essentially been able to achieve, where they've been able to mop up the informal sector with, okay, this is how you get your money daily, this is how you get your money weekly. We need to take the notch a little bit higher, right, where we start to let the pricing, which is equivalent to the payment and the collection systems, match the persona, which is very interesting. And then the product, so it's the persona is in the middle, the product is on the left side, and then the pricing is on the right side. Everything has to be, a very, what I would describe as an equilateral triangle. Everything has to fit so that the informal sector, we can start to close the gap that is really, really wide. And it's not only in Nigeria, it's the same narrative, for most African countries. Out-of-pocket payment expenses are on the continuous high. And to just wrap it up, when you see flexible insurance models, there are different models that are interestingly coming up. So for instance, in Uganda, there's the concept where trying to remember the name of the company now, it eludes me, but what they do is it's community based. They capture all the target audience with similar background, similar pay wages, similar demographics, similar bio profile, and all those things. Get the premiums from them, and then they pay directly to the hospital on the caregiver within the local vicinity, right? It's sort of a capitation-based model, such that X number of services, if any member within that cohort goes to that facility in a month, can get access to at least essential primary care, right? And then you now start building a savings net outside of that in the event of catastrophic healthcare expenses that come up, so they are not left stranded. Interesting thing is when you come to South Africa, there's also the model of captive insurance, where it's a bit of a flip, and it's also showing up in places like Nigeria now, where communities and groups of people pull themselves together. They control the premium, they control the pricing. It's they that give the approvals, right? As opposed to what we see in the traditional insurance space, where the insurer is the one that owns the money, gives approvals, and controls the narrative, right? And then, so that way it's kind of flipping the products to empower the end user and the informal sector, which is predominantly what the informal sector is used to. I mean, you have cooperatives, you have what we call AJOR, and all those things that they're very comfortable with, because they know that if anything goes wrong, they know who to hold, right? And then lastly, I'll talk about the concept of health sharing, which is one of the models that our portfolio company has piloted. It's just pulling essentially everyone together, and everyone is able to pay a fixed sum at the beginning of the month, and then they pay what we call a user fee, afterwards. When they pull that and they bring it together, their health expenses are deducted from a pot and is used to pay for bills. Transparently, it's shown across board to all members that are participating within that health sharing community, and everyone sees their deductible balance. The company just takes a fee as a percentage, to continue to run as admin. So we've seen all those kind of models that will continue to evolve, but by and large, I think what we've seen, what we're beginning to see is that the informal sector has a lot to offer. It's scary, but we cannot all continue to run around the formal sector where, I mean, Mr. John, you know this every month, every year we swap clients, right? So this person takes this, that person takes that, and we're back to square one in the subsequent year. So the market is essentially circumscribed, it's not growing. This sort of new models have to challenge the legacy systems and enable a situation where, the informal sector is growing and, Africa is rising. I'll stop there. Thank
you. Yeah, you're right, Sunday. And it's sad, really, because everybody is just making around the red ocean, which is the formal sector. But the informal, which is huge, it remains the blue ocean that we need to unlock. And I'm glad that a whole lot of us are beginning to come up with models that will help in unlocking that space, because it creates, in Nigeria, for instance, adoption of health insurance is still in the single digits. So that tells you that there is over 90% addressable market that needs to be unlocked. And that 90% is largely in the informal market. And that's where we need to focus more on, come up with digital innovation and initiative and models that will unlock that area. It's quite interesting how a lot of entities are beginning to come up with great ideas to unlock that space. Thank you, Dr. Tunde. Okay, so real quick, we're almost out of time. Dr. Bibi, how do you think that digital innovations support cross-border health insurance initiative within Africa, allowing for greater mobility and access to care?
Okay, thank you. So I think one of the key initiatives, and it's something that was spoken about in the past in my country, but it never took off, is to have is to create unique patient identifiers. So this would be in a form of a card, and that card would contain patient history as well as electronic patient records, so that wherever the patient or the user finds themselves in Africa, the healthcare facility can just tap into that information and get a full view of the previous medical or surgical history. That becomes very important with, for instance, pregnant women who perhaps would move from one country to the other for the sake of delivering the baby. Then the receiving country is able to have that information and it is captured as accurately as possible. So I think that that is an initiative that we can support each other on. The second one would be to use risk analysis and predictive data to identify healthcare patterns across Africa, to identify the areas of similarities, the areas of differences, and also to use that kind of analytic data to prioritize, because there isn't always enough money for all the healthcare needs. So priority setting is important. So that is important, especially because that kind of data can also, at an advanced stage, predict outbreaks of communicable diseases if the patterns are observed carefully. And if we have that kind of innovation where we can predict those events, then we are able to plan better for outbreaks, and then we are able to respond cohesively. Because a lot of the times outbreaks become uncontained because of the movement within the borders. And then the last initiative is around observational data, because insurance relies on data patterns, relies on observation. However, I think in Africa, we don't always take advantage of the vast amount of observational data that we have. There is a high incidence of communicable diseases, like I said. We are in a position where we can observe that data, create treatment packages for insurance, to allow us to have, to treat in a more cost efficient manner. So I think there's a lot of data gaps that exist at the moment. And the second question, I'll be brief on this one because I know that we are running out of time. I think one of the primary barriers that was referred to earlier is the geomapping and the geolocation of Africa itself. Rural Africa is quite big, and with rural Africa being so big, access to healthcare becomes very patchy. And as well is access to technology, infrastructure, and ICT architecture in those remote areas. So I think that is quite a barrier in having a unified digital system, because users in the more metropolitan areas will always be at a more advantage than those that are rural based. Then the other barrier that I alluded to earlier is that of burden of disease. Certain countries, well, I'll talk about my country, because of the unique burden of disease, the insurance packages are tailored such that the highest incidence of the burden is captured. We have something called a prescribed minimum benefits in South Africa, and it speaks mostly to full coverage of insurance beneficiaries on emergencies and trauma. It's important in our setting because of a high incidence of road crashes, that lead to high utilization of the emergency room. However, this is not the reality for other countries or other regions which are dealing with a different burden of disease. So this is something that we would have to overcome if we are to have a unified digital insurance system, to have insurance packages that more or less communicate or are relevant to all regions across our continent. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bibi. And it's really key that we begin to collaborate across geographies, and leverage on data to be able to provide better service to the populace, because there's a whole lot that we can gain by collaboration, and because we know that the cost of care has to be really low for adoption to really pick up. A whole lot of collaboration needs to come to play. And we also know that for most of the players in this space, risk management is key, and for them to actually be in a position to drive this, they need to have access to quality data, and then collaboration will make a whole lot of sense. We are short on time. This is quite something that we can go on and on. It was quite interesting, and an area that is going to further uplift the continent. And I'm glad that we've been able to speak extensively to these areas. So we'll quickly just look at a couple of questions that is on the chat room, and maybe take 1 minute or so to speak to them. Olumide Oduola said, how can digital innovation address the challenges of affordability and accessibility in expanding health insurance coverage, particularly from the South and rural area? I think we've spoken extensively about this, and we've talked about deploying mobile technologies and also deploying digital tools that will help healthcare workers, even when they are remote areas, to be in a position to even gather and carry out enrollment, even with online offline functionalities. So that's quite key. He also asked if what role do partnership between governments, private industries, and technology providers play in driving scalable, sustainable digital health insurance solution, and what examples of success can we share? Is it something any of us want to speak to? On the second question by Olumide, where he's asking about partnership between government, private insurance, and technology. I know we also discussed about how policies are fragmented, and the frequency of changing policies, and the need for regulatory bodies to up their game and rise up to the occasion, especially with the speed at which the digital transformation in the continent, so that they are in a better position to partner with insurance companies and other agencies to be able to propagate quality healthcare across the continent. It's really been an exciting moment for every one of us to look at this critically and to speak to key areas that can further drive healthcare accessibility across the continent. It was a wonderful time, and I'm sure we all had a wonderful time. I want to really appreciate every one of us for making our time to attend and to speak to these topical issues, and also thank our audience that have joined from different part of the world also. I'm sure the future is bright for the continent, and we will be able to achieve a whole lot more. So I'll hand it over to Faidat right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. John. Thank you to our panelists for those thought-provoking insights. Thank you for your moderation. It was incredible. I think one of the key takeaways from this panel session today is the undeniable role of digital innovation in bridging the gap in health insurance, and the importance of the collaboration between the stakeholders, from insurance to technology providers to policymakers. So thank you once again to our panelists and to our moderator. It was a great pleasure having you all here today. Thank you so much. It was a good session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Take care. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
So before we move to our next session, we'd like to give a special thank you to the Lagos State Health Management Agency, the Lagos State Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Health Zambia, Mandate Secretary for Health and Environment, Federal Capital Territory Abuja, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, and the Lagos State Government for their support. And thank you to all of our partners, our sponsors, our panelists and speakers for this entire conference today, and all of our participants as well. So our next session is a product demo by Dr. Chimize Uche. He will present doctorate healthcare services and innovative approach to addressing healthcare gaps in Southeast Nigeria. So to join this product demo session, please leave this session and go back to the conference site. On the conference site, you go to the agenda at the top menu of the site, then click on the live tab to see the session that's currently active. Then click the join button and you're into the next session. Thank you. See you in the next session.